And we also have on the line Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
We're doing well. You know, I got to thinking the other day, a couple of my neighbors were squabbling over a couple of things. I threatened to have you flown in to mediate this entire thing and get the alliances put together the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah, you know what? That's bring me in. We'll see what we can pull out. Just do it over lunch, and we may have to go over to Syria, but, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have really logged some travel miles and had some incredibly interesting experiences lately.
Yeah, you know, it's with the president in Congress having voted to try to find and arm the Free Syrian Army, which, by the way, has just been beleaguered for the last 3 years because this president's inaction. And then I went over there to meet with the battalion leadership of the Free Syrian Army. So the Free Syrian Army is like kind of a big umbrella of people that are basically not aligned with ISIS, not aligned with al-Nusra. And they're folks that want to overthrow the regime that, by the way, has killed 200,000 people. I want to say this real quick. I know a lot of people who call themselves Christ followers and Christians, and I put myself in that boat. But I've heard some people say that profess to be that Bashar al-Assad is somehow a protector of Christians. And I just want to say this. No Christ I follow would call a man who murdered 200,000 of his own people, including mostly women and children, somehow a protector of the name of Christianity. So I want to make that very clear. So I met with these folks and, got an idea of what they are, what they need, what they stand for. And while we were there, I was able to negotiate an alliance between a Syriac Christian group who is actually standing in between Mosul and Raqqa, so they're very much a target of ISIS, and the Free Syrian Army. So we were glad to be able to do that and really send a message that the FSA is out to protect Christians. Also went into Iraq, went into Erbil, Iraq, went through some of the humanitarian camps, which are just very tragic, and then met with our top general there and top military and political leadership to see the difficulty on the ground. And I got to tell you guys, it's going to be a long battle, and it's probably going to get much bigger than it is today.
What impact do you think, what effect have our airstrikes had thus far on ISIS operations?
I think they've been moderately successful in Iraq, and I think they've been mildly, successful in Syria, but I don't even know if successful is the right word. So when I envisioned airstrikes, I envisioned a very robust, intense operation similar to shock and awe, where if you're a terrorist, you don't know when the next 500-pound bomb is going to come into your tent. That's not happening. I did see firsthand that, our strikes in Erbil stopped cold ISIS's advance on Kurdish territory, which, by the way, the Kurds just sang America's praises and said thank you for finally coming back. They were so disappointed that we left in 2011, as everybody was. Never heard a single person in Iraq say they're glad that we left in 2011. But anyway, so it's had effect in stopping some of the movement of ISIS in Iraq. In Syria, I guess it's been kind of like, how if you're hanging outside and a bee comes around and you kind of have to spend a little time swatting at the bee, that's kind of what it is there. It's disrupted them a little bit, but it's not going to be what's necessary to defeat them in Syria.
Well, as I look back and I read some of the coverage of your visit over there, what a unique honor it is to find yourself in your place where you're over there negotiating and getting people of a somewhat like mind to see eye to eye on things.
The thing about this job is there's days where it feels like a job. There's days where you just go places and do things, and then there's also days where you step back and go, holy cow, I was just part of I was just part of history. It may not be the history that's written, in the history books. Adam Kinzinger went to Syria, and, my grandkids may not be reading that, but, to be able to be part of such a big project, a big issue going on, and to hopefully make some difference is really humbling. And I got to tell you, I'm not saying that braggingly. I'm saying that frankly, to thank the people in my district of giving me that opportunity to go and try to make a difference. It's really incredible.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us here from Illinois' 16th District. It's Riley and Scot on WROK. We've heard from some leaders. We've heard from some military experts who are saying that whatever we're doing with airstrikes against ISIS, we can't get the job done without some sort of troop presence on the ground. We talked with Jillian Melcher on Friday from National Review. She spent 2 weeks in Iraq at some of these Christian camps. She talked to some of the Kurdish military leaders. They said the same thing. Hey, these strikes are fantastic, but you're not going to be able to hold what you win without troops on the ground. Do you think that is an inevitable step at some point during this fight?
I'm not going to go yet to inevitable, but I am going to say likely. Here's why. So what happens with airstrikes is this. So you have a big bathtub. You go to your bathtub, you fill it up with water, and then you drop a huge rock in it, right? For a moment, all the water is pushed away from the rock, and that's what airstrikes do. It spreads people out. It pushes them away. But very quickly, when that impact is over, it all comes back in. And that's what you have right now. So the question is, can the Peshmerga be given enough heavy weapons, which our country so far has not been supportive of? They're facing MRAPs, by ISIS on the battlefield, while they have, in essence, F-150 pickups with a 50 cal mounted on the back. But can they be armed and able to take land? And can the Iraqi military be regenerated to be the effective fighting force it was before we abandoned them 3 years ago? You wonder why, the president says he was so shocked at how bad the Iraqi military was. Of course you were, because you didn't have anybody there for 3 years. You can't see anything. But anyway, so I think if we can miraculously get these guys to be much better, then it's possible to do it without ground troops. Keep in mind the Peshmerga, the Kurds, are defending a 1,000-kilometer border right now with ISIS. They have a 1,000-kilometer border with ISIS, and they only have 100,000 troops. And we're saying defend this border and also take back Mosul, which it took our troops years to be able to do. I think it's ultimately going to lead to some kind of if we decide that the existence of ISIS is not acceptable, it's going to take ground presence probably in some form, not necessarily a couple 100,000.
And that's what I've heard from seemingly every military expert, somebody who's been in a boots-on-the-ground sort of situation, someone who has their pedigree in the military, has said, airstrikes are going to do one thing. You'll get some attrition. You're going to drive some people underground, but sooner or later they're going to come back out of the ground again, and they're going to need to be mopped up somehow.
Well, yeah, just look at the bombing of London, right? It was a devastating time. It's written about in the history books. It was very bad. It drove people underground. It killed a lot of British citizens. But at the end of the day, it didn't drive the Brits out of London. And there had been an intense bombing campaign and Nazi soldiers attacking the city. Who knows what would have happened? And so, yeah, that's the situation we find here. And since I'm in the mood for bathtub analogies, I just want to say one more thing here.
And Mondays are great days, by the way, for bathtub analogies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, it's kind of a bathtub day. But the idea of American retreat in leadership. So President Obama gets in, he goes to Egypt, apologizes for America being America, hits the reset button with the Russians. Later on says, things like, wait till I'm reelected, I'll have a lot more flexibility. Talks about a pivot away from the Middle East into Asia, which he never pivoted to Asia. He just pivoted away from the Middle East. Talked about leading from behind in Libya. Had a red line that he didn't enforce. So all this is lack of American leadership. Just like a bathtub, if you pull the drain out of that bathtub, it's going to be empty. And you go up to the bathtub, you pull the drain, and you're like, Adam, you're an idiot. Look, there's still water in there. It's not empty. You lied. That's what American leadership vacuum is. We pull out of the world, there's going to be a few years of stability. Things are going to be fine. But then at one point, you're going to look at the bathtub, or you're going to look at the world, and realize everything fell apart. And it was happening over the last 6 years, but you may not have seen it because it was all under the surface. This is what American leadership vacuum is, and this is why we need a president. And frankly, a Congress that's going to talk about the importance of military spending, the importance of national defense. This is why it's going to take a Congress to come in and fix this. And when we evaluate our presidential candidates, there's one presidential candidate specifically that's been very much on the isolation side of the tent. If you want to see the world continue down this path, he's your choice. If you don't, I think we need somebody that understands what a strong defense and strong American leadership is about.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us here, Illinois' 16th District, Riley and Scott here on WROK. Ebola is here. We have the gentleman in Texas who we hear over the weekend, his condition is getting worse, critical condition with Ebola. There's been a lot of talk, Congressman, about perhaps a travel ban, shutting down travel between the U.S. and countries where Ebola has had an outbreak in Africa. Thus far, the administration has said no, it's not necessary. Do you think there should be a travel ban in effect?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence on this one. So I was in Liberia a year ago, and the thing your listeners need to understand is the reason you have such an outbreak over there is because there's a lack of infrastructure, there's a lack of communication. It's literally in many places in Liberia, it's like living in 1700s United States of America in terms of the ability to get what they need. And so somebody may come down with the flu, and early on, somebody would come down with flu-like symptoms. And most people in Liberia had not even heard about the Ebola outbreak yet because it's just that separated. And so you have this kind of massive initial onset, and that's a big issue. I think here in this country, look, we had this guy that came in from Liberia. He has Ebola. Within 5 hours of anybody knowing it, the whole country knew about it. They had him locked down. They have everybody he's basically been in association with locked down. Unless it goes airborne or something, if it's simply contact like it is today, I don't think Ebola is going to be a problem in the United States like it is in Africa. So, well, I'm okay with some restrictions from West Africa, and I'm fine if the president decides to shut down flights. I think there's a lot of paranoia surrounding this. Every year it's something new. It's bird flu. It's H1. It's swine flu. It's something. And this year it's Ebola. I think we have to be careful. I think we have to be very vigilant. I think our CDC needs to do the best they can. Our airports need to. But at the end of the day, go to school, live your life, have fun, and work hard. And I don't think you're going to get Ebola.
And, the other thing that I'd heard is that, the primo argument against shutting down air travel between here and Liberia and all that is it keeps aid from getting in.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Look, if I was the president, I'd implement some kind of restrictions and some kind of increased screening. Look, he doesn't he's reticent to do this because he's afraid it'll send a bad message to Western Africa that America's afraid of them or something. And America's protection needs to be first and foremost. So, to the extent he sees a real threat, I think this needs to happen. My bigger point is there's a lot of freak out about this that I don't think. It's a very important issue to discuss, and I understand why it's top of all the news as it should be. But I don't think people should be scared to go to school tomorrow or anything.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us here for just another minute or two. It's Riley and Scott here on WROK. You, I believe, are actually in our fair city today, the Forest City, for an appearance with Bobby Schilling, who's trying to win back the 17th District Congressional seat. 16th covers a good portion of our area. The 17th covers the other portion of the area. Why is it so important to get Bobby Schilling back in office?
Look, Bobby is a fantastic congressman. Just a humble guy. That understands what a Republican majority is about. His opponent's first vote is going to be for Nancy Pelosi. Look, Nancy Pelosi wants to be Speaker again. Can you imagine that? I just can't believe it. And, Bobby's just fantastic. He had a tough election cycle in 2012. It was a very bad year for Republicans. But you can't keep a good man down. A guy like Bobby, who's has a bunch of kids and humbly says he wants to serve his country, understands what it means to shrink the budget, to get the federal government not gone, but where it needs to be, a strong national defense. This is the kind of person that we need in Congress. And so I'm giving my time to Bobby just because I think him coming to Washington, D.C. is so important to the future of this country. This is the election cycle that's going to matter. It's going to be hard to take this district for Republicans. Not impossible, but hard to take it for Republicans again if we don't do it this cycle. So all your listeners, I'd encourage to go out, help Bobby, give to him. And we got a month. A month is a long time in politics.
Outstanding. Well, Congressman, as always, we appreciate you taking time out of what we know is a really busy schedule to hang out with us a little bit.
Oh, of course, guys. I love being on the show. Thanks a lot. Hopefully we'll see you in person sometime soon.